You may recognize him as the host of the hit game show Cash Cab, but now he's hitting the road all across the U.S. on his stand-up comedy tour. So joining me now via Zoom is Ben Bailey. Ben, how are you?
I'm great. How you doing, Blake?
I'm good. Thanks for joining me. Okay, so let's just start with this. Tell me how your career in comedy really started or kicked off for you.
I stumbled into it, man. I moved to California. I went to Hollywood when I was like 21 years old because I wanted to get into the movie business. Mm-hmm. I always loved movies. You know, they were like my escape as a kid, and I just wanted to be a part of that. So I moved to L.A. like so many foolish young people to get into the movie business, and I stumbled into a job answering the phones at the Comedy Store, the famous club on Sunset Boulevard, which I had never heard of.
Okay.
And then, you know, I've always kind of been a storyteller and an entertainer of sorts. And I was telling a story of how I ended up out there one night in the green room, which is where I would sit to answer the phone. And people started kind of listening, hanging around, and they thought I was a comedian. So a guy said, "How long have you been doing stand-up?" And I said, "I just started." And he offered me to do a spot on his show that Saturday night, which I at first turned down. But then I said, you know what, the next day I was like, I don't have anything going on. I might as well give this a shot. What the heck? So wrote down a few ideas, you know, called the guy back and said I would do it. And as soon as I said the first thing and got a laugh, that was it. I was like, this is going to be my life.
Yeah, you were all in. I love it. I love how you just jumped into that, really. So how early would you say?
It kind of found me in a way. You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
But I was already a comedian before that happened. I just didn't know it yet.
Yeah. So Ben, how early on would you say that like maybe a career in entertainment, if you will, is something that you knew that you wanted?
You know, it was never that specific.
Okay.
I knew I had something. Like I always liked to be performing in a way in school or at, you know, if my parents had company, I would always put on some sort of a little show, even when I was really little. But as far as knowing what it was going to be, I honestly didn't really know until that moment on stage when I just went, oh my God, this is where I live. This is like, I was so comfortable there, you know, even the first time. So.
Yeah.
Now, I always had a little something, you know.
Right.
I had a fire burning inside me, Blake.
Well, as I said, you know, Ben, most people probably recognize you from the show Cash Cab. So how did that opportunity come about for you? Because you hosted the show for its entire 13 seasons.
I think we did 15 or 16.
Oh, 15, okay.
But it changed networks, and it went away and came back once, so... But yeah, that Cash Cab came along. It was originally an English, a British show. Took place in a black cab, a Mercedes London black cab. The cab itself asked the questions. There was like a computerized Knight Rider kind of voice in it. And the driver just sort of cruised around. And, you know, I think he had a comment from time to time, but didn't say much. When they brought the show to New York, they decided they were going to look for a cabbie who had a really big personality and have that guy be their host or that person be their host. After 3 weeks, they gave up on that, and they were like, we can barely find a guy who can speak English clearly, let alone host a game show. So they started looking at comedians, and I had been a limo driver for years, and everybody at the clubs in New York knew that because I would show up in a suit and tie driving this big fancy car, and everybody's like, what are you doing? I'm like, oh, well, this isn't my own, you know, stand-up isn't paying the bills, so sure. I'm driving a limo. And so when they came around looking for a driver, a comedian who was a driver, I kind of had a little bit of a leg up going into those auditions, I guess. But it was just a series of auditions. I went in, I think I went back 5 times. And finally they said, we want to offer you the job, but first you have to do a background check, and you have to pass the test in order to get a taxi license. So, still some hoops to jump through, but eventually I got it.
Well, and here you are. So what would you say was maybe your favorite aspect of working on the show for so long?
My favorite aspect of working on Cash Cab was probably the camaraderie with the crew, because like we were out on the streets of New York filming for 12 hours at a time, you know. There was like 8 of us, 10 of us out there, and we just, we became like a family. And maybe even furthermore, seeing people that we knew all over the place. Because it's funny, like Manhattan is a huge population, but it's not that big geographically. So if you drive around all day, you see the same people again.
Right.
Like, Mary always reminded me of Louis C.K. used to have his bit about God running out of extras in the movie of your life when you see people again that you don't know. And like, oh my God, there's those people we just saw downtown. But it got to be where everybody was like, oh, is this Cash Cab? Yeah, I had my cousin was on it, or my friend who works down the block was on that show. And like, it felt like we knew everybody in the city and we were just like driving around having a party, It was great. As hard as it was, it still felt like that. That's probably
Yeah, absolutely. I love the community aspect of that for you. I think that's really special and probably made your experience even better. So, Ben, since Cash Cab, you've hosted some other game shows like Who's Still Standing and segments on Brain Games. But what do you think is next for you, or what are you maybe still hoping to achieve within your career?
Well, I started doing stand-up initially. That's how it all began, right? So I'm just kind of getting back to those roots at this point. I never stopped doing stand-up, but at this point, I'm just focused on it. I've booked, I think I have about 70 shows lined up for the rest of this year.
Wow.
And all over the country. And I'm just, I'm just going to be a comedian. That's what I love. That's what in my opinion, the thing that I do best of anything I've ever attempted in my entire life. And I've always been kind of like succeeding at stand-up, but looking for the next thing. And I'm kind of feeling like I'm done with that. I'm just going to be a comedian and enjoy it and go out on the road and do that the best I can and have fun with it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think returning to your roots is a lesson that we can probably all take a little something from. So speaking of that though, so you're on tour, you're performing this weekend here in Springfield at the Blue Room Comedy Club. So what can our audience here in Springfield expect?
They can expect to laugh hard enough that they forget about the things in their life that suck.
Okay.
That is what I see my job as. Like if you buy a ticket and come to my show, it is my job to make sure that you laugh to that point where, at least for a moment, you're not thinking about the things in your life that are stressful or not quite what you want them to be. You forget about all that.
Yeah.
You're laughing. You're off in some happy place laughing, So that's what they can expect.
Okay.
I take that very seriously.
Yes.
I want to see them laughing and know that I've gotten them to that spot. Yeah,
I think that's so important. All right, Ben, how can people keep up with you online?
Well, I have a YouTube channel, which is Ben Bailey Comedy. I've got tons of stand-up clips and some short films and web series that I made on there. I'm Real Ben Bailey on pretty much all the social media, which I'm pretty active on TikTok and Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and YouTube.
All the things.
All those things. Like that. That's where the comedy business takes place at this point.
Yeah.
So they can keep up with me on there. But I'm not a person who, you're not going to see what I'm having for breakfast. I'm just going to tell you where my shows are and where you can come and.
Okay. All right. Hey, I can respect
that out.
Yeah.
I can't make that leap to like, here I am making eggs and bacon.
Well, you know what? You're making people laugh on social media, and there's not much more you can ask for than that. So, all right. Ben Bailey live this Sunday, May 14th at the Blue Room Comedy Club. Get your tickets now. Ben, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Blake. We'll see you Sunday night.
Bye.